Joseph Ratzinger became Pope Benedict XVI on the 19th of April 2005. He is regarded as one of the greatest theologians in church history. Even before he became Pope, Time magazine regarded him as one of the most influential people in the world. Throughout his long career, he wrote over 70 books and contributed to the final documents of the Second Vatican Council. He became Pope at the age of 78, but even then continued to write books, pamphlets, and papal letters. His impact on the Catholic Church is immense, and his influence will last for decades to come. This is the story of his life. Ratzinger was born in Germany in 1927 and was therefore just 12 years old when Hitler invaded Poland in 1939 and began the Second World War, the greatest conflict in human history. He spent his teenage years in wartime Germany and was forced to join the Hitler Youth in 1941. He deserted his military post in 1945 as German cities were bombed by the Allied powers and the Soviet Union invaded from the east. As a teenager, Joseph Ratzinger witnessed firsthand the terrible clash between two destructive ideologies of communism and Nazism. It was an experience that remained with him for the rest of his life and convinced him of the destructive power of atheism. Atheism denies the existence of God and with it the denial of moral truth. Thus a vacuum is created which is filled with the ideas of dominant characters such as Karl Marx and Hitler. Ratzinger was influenced by these events and later as a theologian frequently warned against what he called the dictatorship of relativism. After the war was over, he joined a seminary in November 1945 and was ordained a priest 6 years later in 1951. He became a curate in the parish of St. Martin in Munich City, but also continued his studies in both philosophy and theology, and was appointed a professor in 1958 at the University of Bonn at the age of 31. By the late 50s, he was a highly respected theologian, and during the Second Vatican Council of the early 60s, he was a consultant theologian to Cardinal Frings and was involved in writing some of the last documents of the Council, the last 16 documents. In 1968, he also wrote a book entitled, one of many books he wrote actually, but he wrote a book entitled Introduction to Christianity, and moved in a conservative direction as he disliked the trend of Marxism in the universities around Europe. After a long academic career which spanned over a quarter of a century, Ratzinger was appointed Archbishop of Munich and Freising in March 1977. 3 months later, he was made a cardinal by Pope Paul VI in June 1977. In 1981, Joseph Ratzinger was appointed prefect of the Congregation of the Doctrine of the Faith. He spent 24 years in this powerful position within the Roman Curia. He was one of John Paul II's closest advisors, and as leader of this congregation, Ratzinger defended traditional church doctrine in regard to such issues as birth control, homosexuality, and interfaith dialogue. As a young theologian during the Second Vatican Council, Ratzinger was involved in many of the final documents. One document, Nostra Aetate, set out the guidelines in regard to interfaith dialogue with other churches and faiths. However, he was wary of new trends towards what was called indifferentism, which suggested that Jesus was just one of many paths to God. In the year 2000, Ratzinger wrote a highly influential work known as Dominus Iesus, which set out the modern guidelines in regard to a Catholic faith and its relationship with other faiths. In 2002, the following year, he was elected Dean of the College of Cardinals. As prefect or leader of the Congregation of the Faith, Joseph Ratzinger was regarded by Time magazine in the year 2000 as one of the most influential people in the world. However, he tried to resign this position on a number of occasions. When Pope John Paul died in 2005, Ratzinger prayed at the Conclave not to be selected, as he was 78 years of age at the time. However, once chosen, he chose the name Benedict as Pope. Benedict XV had been seen as a man of peace and united the various different warring factions in Europe during his reign. However, and Saint Benedict as well founded the Benedictine order, which contributed much to European civilization. The new Pope, Benedict XVI, waived the 5-year rule in regard to Pope John Paul and declared him blessed. He also canonized 45 people and declared John of Avila and Hildegard of Bingen doctors of the Church. As Pope, Ratzinger was also aware of the immense harm that atheists had done, such as Nietzsche and Marx and other such people had done to Christianity. However, he sought to counteract this trend by offering a more positive version of Christianity. And as Pope in 2007, he wrote a highly influential book known as Jesus of Nazareth, which has since become a bestseller. One chapter in the book, which I found quite interesting, is given to explaining the Lord's Prayer, or the Our Father. Jesus referred to God as my Father, so by using the term Our Father, we become, in a sense, brothers of Christ. Ratzinger also refers to the many references to Father throughout the Bible in order to better understand what is meant by the term. Jesus' reference to heaven is a powerful statement against those who say there is neither a God nor heaven. In the first petition, Hallowed be thy name, is a repetition of the second commandment and a reminder of the need to treat the Lord's name with great reverence. Thy kingdom come is a statement made by Jesus in reference to, he made many references to the kingdom throughout his ministry, and his mission on earth is largely to guide people towards the new kingdom. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven is a request for God's peace to come to the earth. Much of the suffering on earth is caused by a refusal by man to keep the commandments and also to accept God's will as it unfolds. In the second half of the prayer, Ratzinger says that daily bread was interpreted as a reference to the Eucharist by the early Church Fathers. He also says that at a more practical level, it is a prayer for the poor, or indeed for the apostles of their time, who were often lived on a day-to-day basis. The plea for forgiveness is based on our capacity to forgive others. All of mankind makes mistakes. However, Ratzinger refers to the Sermon on the Mount where Jesus says, if you are offering your gift to the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave the gift there before the altar. First go and be reconciled with your brother and then come and offer your gift. So the prayer strongly emphasizes forgiveness as a core principle of Christianity. Ratzinger interprets the sixth request as asking not to be sent too strong at trials beyond our strength to bear. And the last request is a plea to be aware of and to be kept free, basically, of evil. The modern world and the woke movement and even the state itself sometimes promotes false concepts of rights, according to Ratzinger, in regard to abortion and false ideas which have recently emerged in regard to the idea that you can change your sex and gender. This last petition asks to be kept free of such falsehoods. This is actually a very simplified version of the prayer. Ratzinger himself gives 40 pages of the book over to explaining the Our Father. He made multiple references to both the Old and New Testament in explaining the various words and phrases in this prayer. So it might be worthwhile thinking about purchasing a copy of this book. Thank you for watching and please subscribe to the channel.